So if you had to choose between Hammett and Gertrude Stein, you would take...
Oh, Gertrude Stein.
Gertrude Stein.
Yeah,
That's what I thought. From Brandeis University, welcome to Recall This Book, a podcast that looks backwards to see into the future. And never farther into the future than today when I speak with Samuel Delany, the brilliant and celebrated science fiction and fantasy writer. Probably he is best known for mind-bending novels like Dahlgren and gender-bending ones like Trouble on Triton. If I told you everything I respect and admire about his science fiction, going back to his first novel, The Jewels of Aptor in 1962, and everything I love about his Nevèrÿon fantasy stories, we would never get to hear the man himself. So let's get right into the conversation he and I had at the Newhouse Center for the Humanities at Wellesley in February 2019, just before he gave a talk there about Afrofuturism. Chip and I, he goes by Chip, face to face, were sitting in my office along with his friend Bill, and the conversation turned to the question of how you distinguish science fiction from other genres. Can I ask about, you use the word paraliterary a lot. Is that specific to science fiction? Is that a...
Well, it was the term for the paraliterary genres were the genres specifically that if in the middle of the century you asked the man on the street, l'homme moyen sensuel, who would say, well, that's not literature.
Yeah.
And so it was science fiction, westerns, mysteries, comic books, pornography, Now I think any of those can rise to very high art.
Yeah.
I think all of that, the very fact that it is a separate genre means that it has its own way of becoming, there are people who can do something with it, and then there are people who don't do very much with it. But I think there are people who do. And there are the people. There are the great workers in the comics field, like Alan Moore, and Neil Gaiman, and who gone on to do other things as well.
Yeah, but the point of the classification would be that even if someone becomes great in that field, it's not like they earn the title literary. Like a great science fiction writer does not become a literary writer; they remain paraliterary.
Yes, although I think there are some writers who do earn that. One of the ones I'm going to be talking about later on this afternoon, Theodore Sturgeon. Yeah, who I think is just some of the great writers of the middle 20th century. Yeah, and who is just his collected stories is one of the best portraits of the world, and from the middle of the 20th, the middle 50s through to the end of the end of the century that we have. Yeah. And some of it was science fiction, and some of it was, very borderline science fiction. But it's a great, that's great art. Yeah. And I think that I would much prefer to see that in a Library of America edition than some of the stuff of a woman whom I very like personally very much, but I didn't think is anywhere near as interesting a writer, Ursula Le Guin. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I remember, you also have a boundary. You also don't think we should go back beyond Gernsback and science fiction, to look for earlier, like H.G. Wells.
Well, it's not science fiction. You call it proto-science fiction if you want. But I think
didn't Wells call it scientific romance?
I mean, I don't think you need to go back. I mean, there's a reason why the term science fiction gelled at that certain point in about 1922. Yeah. There is one occurrence of the word science fiction in a book from 1851, but when you read a little earnest book about a great old subject, I think that's in 1851 or 1849. But even there, it clearly doesn't mean what Gernsback meant. Yeah. Or what Gernsback's fans, who named it science fiction. Gernsback never used science fiction. Yeah. He used scientifiction.
Scientifiction.
Which was just too clumsy to say. And then the fans in their letter columns turned it into science fiction.
But so you think that makes Frankenstein not science fiction?
No,
It makes
I think
the Time Machine not science fiction.
I think, with all due respect, I
Yeah.
think that's a crock of shit.
Yeah.
If I may use a word.
Yeah.
That's no.
We don't have to beep.
No, I don't think that they're Gothic novels. They're got
Yeah.
and the Gothic novel is a perfectly good
Yeah.
and reasonable genre.
Yeah.
And there's no point in snatching it out of one genre. It's not just an attempt to give it the Gothic novel has enough problems maintaining its own dignity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
How do you feel about the different labels applied to your own writing? Do you feel like you have books that get lumped into one category that you really think belong in a different category, or?
if anybody will read them at all, I'm very pleased. Yeah, I mean, I call the Nevèrÿon books. I think of are basically sword and sorcery.
Yeah.
And or whatever you want to call them. I don't think they're science fiction. I think they're
do people treat them as allegorical? That is, do people take them as really being about New York during the 80s, or do people take them?
Well, some of them are about New York some of them are about New York in the 80s,
Time of Plague and Carnivals.
The Tale of Plagues.
Tale
of Plagues and Carnivals.
Plagues and Carnivals.
Yeah, which was written before we stopped referring to AIDS as a plague.
Right?
Yeah, because it's so yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was actually wondering about the role that poetry plays in your writing. Like, I really like those little verses. I guess I don't know if you call them poems. The verses inside Nevèrÿon, like the verse that people play with the balls. I went out to Barbara's pit.
I went out to Barbara's pit.
Barbara's pit. Yeah.
Crescent's moon's
first dawning.
But the thanes of Garth had covered it.
You've got it. Yeah.
No one found a place to sit.
And Bellum's key no longer fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you think? I mean, is poetry important for you? Or?
Yeah. Well, I think folk poetry is always interesting, and that's just an attempt to use it.
Yeah.
I like poetry, and I read a lot of poetry, and I read a lot of poetry, and there have been periods where I thought I was on the staff of a poetry magazine for many years, called The Little Magazine, that was run by David Hartwell, who at a certain point decided to give it up and turn it into the same editorial. Became the New York Review of Science Fiction.
Oh yeah,
which it survived for another few years until and still is going on as the New York Review of Science Fiction.
Come in. So we never did get back to finish that discussion about poetry. That knock was Delany getting summoned to speak to a Wellesley class about writing AIDS. And then, unfortunately, right when we got started again, about 90 minutes later, and we had returned to talking about one of my own favorite writers, I had just turned on a ridiculously noisy coffee machine.
What stories are you talking
Talking about the infamous Phil K. Dick.
Is he infamous in your opinion?
I was never a Philip K. Dick fan.
No kidding, really?
I like his non-science fiction very much.
Yeah.
I like his Memoirs of a Crap Artist, Mary and the Giant. I edited Mary and the Giant.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Have you ever read that early one in Milton Lumpke territory?
No.
About the typewriter salesman?
No, I haven't.
I like that one.
Yeah. But the science fiction never got to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever finished Man in the High Castle.
Yeah. And Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? You're not a fan of that one?
I like the movie.
Yeah.
I like Blade Runner.
Sure. And there's sugar behind you, too, if you want. Yeah. I like the book better than the movie, but I know I'm basically alone in that. Most everyone loves the movie more.
Well, I don't think I ever read the book all the way through.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, I was never a Philip K. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It just seemed very pedestrian.
Well, you care about the language.
Yeah.
And I would say he's like.
Yes.
His politics are fascinating.
Approach.
I mean,
they are fascinating.
That's what's good. I mean, he has a sense of the ordinary guy.
Yep.
That I think is great. But for me, that's the high point of
Yeah. You know, I have a friend who just wrote an article about him, and it turns out he was very pro-life. Did you know that? Like, he was
I'm not surprised.
fierce about abortion rights. Do you want milk or sugar?
Huh? Yeah.
I'm all set.
Yeah, I do know that. I know he got into a big argument with Joanna Russ, who is one of my favorite writers.
I love her.
Yeah, and that they,
But so, Chip, something that you were saying reminded me of something you said about the sentence. Like, is that the sentence is the most important unit of writing for you?
Yeah, for me, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I go along with Stein that the paragraph is the emotional unit
Right.
of the English language.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you also have it as it's also a point about the sentence instead of the word. I think like the part that I was reading was apropos of your skepticism about the idea of the logos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is that how you think of your own writing? Do you think of it as sentence
Basically,
making?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is that different for science fiction versus fantasy versus other kinds of writing?
No, I don't think that's where the difference lies. I think all writing requires that, but I think the science fiction allows some combinations of words. Science fiction is a genre, and it's a genre that is distinguished because certain things can happen in the language in science fiction that don't happen anyplace else.
Yeah.
That certain science fiction tends to take the literal if it has a choice between a figurative meaning and a literal meaning, it's the literal meaning is already opened.
Yeah.
It's always open.
Yeah.
Her world exploded.
Yeah.
It's not an emotionally muzzy metaphor. It can
Yeah.
actually mean that a planet belonging
Yeah.
to a woman blew up.
Right.
As in Princess.
Princess Leia.
Yeah, right. Yeah, her world exploded.
Yeah, I see. So science fiction is like
Yeah.
actualization.
Yes, yes, or
Yeah.
or he turned on his left side, which is insomniac tossing.
Yeah, but you could turn on.
you can turn on the switch on your sinestral flank.
Yeah.
And there are all these the door dilated.
Yeah.
Which is a line from a Harlan Ellison from a Heinlein novel.
Yeah.
Which knocked Harlan Ellison's socks off once,
Yeah.
because it meant that that the door had literally dilated.
Yeah.
That there was an iris aperture
Yeah.
thing again.
Yeah. In Star Trek, they always make that joke whenever they find a 20th century spaceship. They'll always walk up to the door and say, "Oh, the door is broken," and then somebody has to go and physically open the door because it doesn't.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah. This door is not dilating.
And right.
Yeah. But I was thinking of another connection when I was reading that, Chip, which is in the Nevèrÿon books. You're also, it seems like one of the things you're talking about in Nevèrÿon is that there's kinds of that language is a powerful force also.
Yes.
There's that image of language. It's like if you write people's names down, you can control them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's always been that's in Nevèrÿon, for instance, the gods the gods are those who cannot be named.
Yeah.
They have a whole series of nameless gods.
Yeah.
It's not just one nameless god. They're all they're really important gods you just don't name.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things in Nevèrÿon, I don't know. Have you read the entire sequence?
Yeah.
Oh, you have. Okay. Well, it doesn't capitalism doesn't get invented until money gets invented.
Right.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was sort of wondering whether writing was the moment that capitalism gets invented, or
Yeah. And it follows the Levi Strauss thing. What is writing used for? To keep track of the work of slaves.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
What's the basic use for writing is to make sure you know what the slaves are producing.
Yeah, so I was reading how important Levi Strauss was to you. It sounds like you were reading Levi Strauss the same moment that
I was reading some before. I started reading Levi Strauss when people first started reading him.
Yeah. Like in the mid-'60s then.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So before a lot of the post-structuralist stuff had been translated into English, that Levi Strauss comes before.
Yeah, well, he was the first. He was the first that got translated.
Yeah. So I had a big open-ended question, and I kept trying to get a less open-ended way of asking it. But basically, I was wondering about the ways that people think about the categories of race and sexuality and gender have changed a lot in the decades you've been writing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How has that Did those change? Are you aware of those changes did they make a difference for you in your writing, or?
Well, yeah. Well, they make a difference. Certainly, they make a big difference about the way I live.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't. I mean, Stonewall didn't happen until I was 27 years old. And I was. And
you've been published writer for like 7 years by then, or 8 years.
Right. Yeah. And I was one of the first people to come out in science fiction.
Yeah.
Even before Stonewall.
Yeah.
But I didn't. But and those were the ones that got me the prizes.
Yeah.
Things like I and Gomorrah and Time Considers the Helix of Semi-Precious Stones. Yeah. Those are the ones that got the Nebula Awards. It was almost. I've often said that if gay people didn't exist, straight people would have had to invent them.
But then also you had books
because the Science Fiction Writers of America was not a gay-friendly organization. Yeah. Boy, was it not. Yeah. I mean, it was not sensitive at all. I mean, some of the things that went on in the newsletter were enough to curl your toes. But at the same time, they were the things that when you wrote about something like that, people like to hear them, and those are the ones that got the prizes.
Were you more aware of it being of issues around being gay, or was race or sexuality like in the science fiction world? Were they both things that were threatening for you? I know you've written about moments where you felt like put on the spot because of your race too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The article I had in mind is called Racism and Science Fiction, and it appeared in 1998, but it's about a moment in 1968 when at an awards banquet, the young Delany won 2 Nebula Awards, which is kind of like winning 2 National Book Awards in different categories. As he walked by Isaac Asimov's chair, Asimov said in a stage whisper, Chip, we only voted you those awards because you're Negro.
Yeah.
In fact, Asimov you mentioned as someone who said something.
And he was making a joke. He was making a joke he was making a joke. But it was a reminder. But I took it like as a reminder. Nobody's going to ever forget it.
Yeah.
Here we are. Here we are giving you giving you your second prize of the evening. Yeah. But you are black.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and here we are in 2018 and 19, and N.K. Jemisin is running up this same thing, which is basically like she's guilty of winning a prize while black.
Right. Yes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but it didn't. It clearly didn't deter you, but it must have. Do you think it shaped?
I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I was also thinking. I mean, when you're talking about the gay unfriendliness of the world, I was also thinking that in novels like Triton, you're also talking about trans identity too.
Yes,
you're talking about all kinds of gender categories.
Sure, yeah. One of the things that I hope I get a chance to talk about. Basically going to be largely going to be talking. I'm talking about Theodore Sturgeon's More Than Human, and his first novel is the novel of transgender revenge. It's really quite amazing.
What novel is it?
It's called The Dreaming Jewels, or it was called The Synthetic Man. And it's really an amazing little novel, and it's about a young man who runs off to the circus and lives as a girl lives as and has some strange powers, which are presented pretty believably.
Yeah.
But it allows him his concern about gender and things like that is just not the same as everybody else's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So do you think then it sounds like I was sort of thinking you might say it's an easier world now for people who are wanting to explore or be experimental, but you wouldn't say that. I mean,
as soon as there was no at that time. This was a book that was written pre Christine Jorgensen.
Yeah, right.
But it was.
I think about things like Robert Heinlein's By His Bootstraps,
right?
Which is
sure.
not the friendliest way.
Yeah, or Friday, or I Will Fear No Evil, where he carries a woman's consciousness inside his own body, and things like that.
Yeah, I should look back at that again. Actually,
The problem is those later novels are unreadable.
They are unreadable.
They really are. But nevertheless, what they're about is still interesting. Yeah, and certainly Triton was an attempt to write some of those things sideways.
Yeah. Do you think it was received that way? Because I read it now and I just think it's an amazing book. I think it's totally you're welcome. But I really value it. I love teaching it, and But do you think people took that? Do you think they got what was going on?
I think some of them got. Some of them did. A friend of mine, a transgender woman, said that the Triton made her put off her transitioning for several years because she wanted to really question whether she really wanted to do it.
Interesting.
And then she said, but then when she decided she really knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
And so she said, I thank you for that.
Wow.
I didn't rush it.
Yeah.
So that was very nice. Yeah.
That's great. It just made me think about what I love about your books, about how complicated your writing is. And that sort of made me wonder, all of the lovely meta-referential games that you're playing with Steiner and, the different characters inside Nevèrÿon. Do you think of what you're doing as writing fiction, which happens to have some criticism in it, or is it your writing theory in the form of a novel?
That's a good question. I think I usually have an argument. I usually have an argument that I want to although I don't want it. I want it to be an open-ended argument.
Yeah.
Like Trouble on Triton.
Yeah.
For instance, basically, the question is this guy nuts? Yeah. Or is he? Or is that guy nuts? Or is he hopeless? Or is there hope? Yeah. And I think I have my opinion. Yeah. But it's you have to get to the last sentence of the book. Yeah. To figure out what my opinion is. Yeah. I think he's nuts. Yeah.
I was sort of surprised by that actually when I got to the end. I was,
But people have said that he's actually pretty sympathetic. I've had guys say, well, he's pretty sympathetic. Not at the beginning. He's just absolutely intolerable at the beginning. But by the end, you realize this poor nut is nuts. Yeah.
Can I read you one of my favorite lines from?
Sure.
This is inside in Nevèrÿon. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but you're describing how being in the world of Nevèrÿon works. You say, imagine going to a wonderful gallery exhibit. Do you remember this?
Yes.
With an intelligent, witty, well-spoken, and deeply cultured friend, an expert in the period, richly informed on the customs and economics of the time, and a friend who you only wished, as the two of you walked from painting to painting, would shut up.
Shut up. Yes.
So is that how you think about
this? Was this was not me. This was Elizabeth Lynn.
Oh.
In fact, I ascribe it to Elizabeth Lynn, who said this at a party.
Yeah.
She liked them. She said, and I thought, what a great. What a great description of the Nevèrÿon. Yeah. So I included it.
Do you take it as a compliment, or?
Well, not as a compliment. I think it's accurate.
Yeah.
Because what you said. You said, am I a Proust fan? Well, it's kind of Proust-like. It's Proust is like that. At a certain point, you wonder, how long is he going to go on? How long is the sentence going to go on?
Yeah.
And I have a great deal of respect for this Chandler Hammond, tough guy, quick, sense. Which I'm always aspiring towards. But then I'm
Hemingway and the 6-word short story.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's not you.
No. Although I'm always dragging it behind me.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're not. So if you had to choose between Hammond and Gertrude Stein, you would take...
Oh, Gertrude Stein.
Gertrude Stein. Yeah, that's what I
thought. I think she's one of the great critics of the... And a great... I used to go on New Year's Eve. there was a place called the Paula Cooper Gallery in New York,
Yeah.
and before 1982 till the place closed down, we would go to, and every year we would alternate between reading Finnegan's Wake paragraph by paragraph,
Yeah.
and reading The Makings of Americans.
Wait, which gallery was this?
The Paula Cooper Gallery.
Yeah, I went to that. I went to that when I was in the end of college, like 1989
There you go.
or
I'm
something.
surprised
Yeah.
if you kind of 3 o'clock in the morning, you might have seen me reading.
Ah. Wow. Yeah, the Paula Cooper Gallery. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
Paula
amazing.
Cooper. Yeah. Mhm.
Wow.
No,
Yeah.
I like to. I used to read there. Basically, me and Richard Castellanos would
Yeah.
get together, and I think over the 15 years I did that,
Yeah.
I must have read all of Finnegan's Wake out loud,
Wow.
or at least been because we invariably, what would happen is we would take every other paragraph, Richard and I, and invariably at 3 o'clock in the morning after the first day, the next 3 readers wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
And we just go on reading.
That's awesome.
And so we just
Oh, we
read.
got to get one of those in Boston.
Yeah.
We need that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chip, thanks a lot. And on behalf of the podcast, too, thanks
Well,
a lot.
thank you.
I really
This is fun.
appreciate it. Yeah,
Right,
it was really fun. Recall This Book is the brainchild of John Plotz and Elizabeth Ferry, is affiliated with Public Books, and today was recorded at the Newhouse Center for the Humanities at Wellesley College. Our music comes from a song by Eric Cheslow and Barbara Cassidy, Fly Away. You may be interested in checking out our recent interview with Madeline Miller, author of Circe, and my conversation with the comic novelist Steve Macaulay. Upcoming episodes also include a conversation with the poet David Ferry. Finally, thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoyed today's show, it would be incredibly helpful to us if you took a minute to write a review or just rate us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.